Hey everyone, this time it is the User Interface Positioner. It's useful for making UIs and it has a couple of benefits over some other ways of making UIs that I can talk about. So a common way that I see that even I've made UIs is I'll take an object, let's say a cube. This isn't an actual UI, actually. Maybe let's go for a quad. Let's go for a quad. That's more UI-like, at least. So we might have, say, a piece of text, a countdown, a HP value here, and what I see some people do, including myself, is they will take it and they will find within the armature of a user, they'll find, say, their head bone here, and they'll take the cube or the UI element and they'll parent it to the head bone. And you'll see here that that follows me around, and yet I can move it. And it's acting like UI, but it's not flexible in that it has to be parented to the user. What that means is if you want to then detach that UI, you have to go through and do an unparent operation. And it can get messy if you've got complicated objects or things where you want more flexibility. Like, this is stuck in that point of view. It's never going to, like, move or be aware from that. It's always stuck to my head bone. You might something that's, like, connected to the chest or connected to the head or the neck or something else, and you're kind of stuck. So there's a component which will help with that, and I use it in the gesture wheel, and it's super cool in that regard, and I'll go over that why again. But let's first of all, let's set it up. So I'm going to do, again, create new, but this time I'm going to do empty object. So an empty object is just an empty transform of the world. If I go attach component, transform drivers, user interface positioner, you'll see it then goes to my head point, and it's directly in my view here, so it's kind of hard to see. I've got a gizmo in my eyes here. But that's fine. The trick here is that you then add stuff to this. So if we would go ahead and make a quad again. So 3D model, quad. It is. Make it smaller. If we then parent this to the empty object, we can now move that quad around independently of the UI, and it will follow us around locally. Sorry, not locally. It'll follow us around with an offset from that UI point in the center of the head. So the UI positioner is where the center of the head is, and then any part of UI, you make it a separate object. So now I've always got this cube here and it follows me around. You'll see there's a delay, and that's controlled by the user interface positioner's settings here. So you can see here position speed, rotation speed, activation distance, activation angle. You'll see here a little bit, if I get away by just a little bit, it won't follow me. So here it's easing off. And then when I move further away, it'll then activate. That's the activation angle, sorry, activation distance. So if I drop this down, where are we? This is upside down and that way around. If you've got a gizmo in your head, it will cause keyboards to spawn inside your head, because it does like a raycast out to find empty space or something. And so here we'll do, say, 0.1. You'll now see that I can't really get away from it. You can also up the position speed here. So if I double this, you'll see that when I move away, it catches up faster. Same with angle. Angle controls when it updates here. So you'll see I can move a lot, and then the quad will update. So again, here you can change this down to 0, and then it will always follow you. You should up the rotation speed, and that controls how fast it rotates. And now you'll see it's following me quite fluidly. That's it for the properties that I play around with. I'm going to spawn in the gesture wheel and show you how I've got it set up there, and then it should make more sense about why I recommend this over parenting it directly to your armature. Let me delete this so it disappears. So if I go to my public folder and I find the gesture wheel, so avatar stuff, gesture wheel 1.1, here it is. If I register this to the user and it's on the left hand, so if I do the shortcut on the left hand, you'll see this gizmo here. That's being driven by user interface positioner. So if I do it again, I can get the image and then inspect. You'll see here, this is just a picture. We'll go over the gesture system in another video that's behind the scenes. And then we go up from gesture lock here. You'll see indicator placer, and that has the user interface positioner on it. And you'll see here that I've ramped these values up really high so that it follows me around quite fast. I get away with it a lot though, because this only shows up when you do the combination. And again, exactly the same setup, so the placer follows me around, and then the gesture lock is offset by that. The gesture lock itself is also movable, so when I select it here, I can then move it. And that's, I think, covered in the gesture wheel overview video. It allows you to move the UI around relative to you, so if you're a smaller avatar or you've got like a different view range, you can put it to wherever you need it. So what's the benefit of doing this over the parenting to a bone? The benefit is here that when I apply this up to my avatar, which then causes it to follow me around and then hide it, this here isn't parented to a bone. It's still within the gesture system here. So if I want to get rid of the entire gesture system, I don't have to go through the hierarchy of my skeleton and find where that indicator is. It's still underneath that. So I can just delete that, and it's gone. There's no need for me to, navigate through the armature and find it. That's why I use UserInterfacePositioner. You can see it in action in Deathmatch template as well, and anything that uses that system. So I think the Team Deathmatch map that Bus Driver is working on also has that in there. And again, that's so that like I can make user UI for you that isn't parented to your avatar. If you think about a map that you go to that has UI or only has UI for a certain rank or class within a game mode, it's a lot better to use that component rather than having to parent it to their avatar, because you can swap it in and out. What we do in the gesture wheel, for example, is we write to that user. Second here, transform drivers user interface positioner. We write to this target user variable using logics. So we pull out an inspector here. This is a user reference. So if you wanted to do that, then you'll need to use a node called writeRef. So go to references, writeRef, plug this in, and now you'll see it takes a user. And so here you can do any user. So we can do host user here, and then that will make it follow me. Or you could do a user by username or a user active user. You can do all sorts there. So if I clear this, you'll see it's stuck there. And if I pulse that, it jumps back to me. There you go. That's UserInterfacePositioner. I hope I made its case for why it exists. I really like it. I'll use it for all UI. And I just find it really useful. I hope that helps. See you next time.